How's the prep going, bride-to-be? The message pinged as I was double-checking table arrangements. It was from an old college friend, Rachel. I smiled, surprisingly smooth considering it's tomorrow, thanks, Rachel. Then came her reply. Hey, random Q, isn't your brother coming from Texas? I could have sworn I saw his wife post vacation pics in Switzerland this morning. I paused. That couldn't be right. Of course he's coming, I typed, frowning. Whole family's confirmed. Why? Maybe I'm wrong then. Just looked like her and the kids in Europe. Ignore me if I'm mistaken. My chest tightened. I opened Instagram. My fingers were shaking. There it was. A photo of my nephews in front of Lake Geneva. Caption, nothing like spring in Switzerland with the boys. Hashtag family time. Hashtag best trip ever. I stared at the screen, the colors draining from my face. Comments rolled in underneath. Europe suits you all. Hope this trip is everything you dreamed of. Wow, still can't believe you pulled this off with 3 kids. None mentioned my wedding. I called my mom. She didn't pick up. I called again. The 3rd time she answered. Her voice was clipped, almost rushed. Hey, Kira, can we talk later? We're kinda... Mom, where are you? I interrupted. A beat of silence. In Zurich. My stomach dropped. Tomorrow is my wedding. I know, sweetheart, and I'm sorry, but Marcus said this trip was a once-in-a-lifetime thing for the kids. You know how expensive Europe gets in summer? And the flights were so cheap now? I interrupted again. The money I sent you, for flights, hotels, that was for my wedding. Another pause. Well, technically yes, but we thought this was important too. You're young, you'll understand when you have your own. I felt like I'd been slapped. $15,000 I'd saved working overtime, skipping trips, skipping everything gone. And they weren't even planning on telling me. I hung up. Quietly, then I sat on the couch in my apartment strewn with wedding decorations and let the silence ring in my ears. Tyler, my fiancé, walked in. He took one look at my face and knelt beside me. Kira, talk to me. They're not coming, I said flatly. My mom, my brother, his whole family, they're in Europe. With the money I sent them. He blinked. Wait, what? I told him everything. He didn't interrupt, just held my hand tighter. They chose a vacation over your wedding. I nodded, unable to speak. The next morning, I stood in front of a full-length mirror, dressed in the gown I'd dreamed of since I was 15. The silk hugged just right. My hair was pinned into soft waves. My makeup looked perfect. But my eyes, they didn't shine. Not the way they should have. Tyler's parents picked me up. His mom turned back in the car and gently said, Kira, we know your family isn't here, but if you're okay with it, we'd love to sit on your side today. You're like a daughter to us. I bit back tears. I'd like that. More than you know. At the venue, I glanced at the family section. Only Tyler's parents sat there, the empty seats beside them reserved for people who never intended to come. During the vows, I almost lost it. But when I looked at Tyler, his calm eyes, the way he reached for my hand, I found my voice again. We were married, and not a single person from my side was present. That night, there were no texts from my mother. No call from Marcus. Not even a congrats comment on social media. Only one person from my family reached out, my cousin Lana. A message popped up. Just found out what happened. I'm so sorry, Kira. This is messed up. You didn't deserve that. I'm proud of you. I cried for 10 minutes straight. A week later, I got a letter. Thick envelope, law firm seal. It was from the attorney handling my grandfather's estate. He passed the year before, and I assumed all the paperwork had been wrapped up. The letter inside made my heart pound. As per the final revision of Edward Shaw's will, we are informing you of a significant amendment made to his estate distribution. I kept reading. Originally, the estate valued at just over $650,000 was to be split evenly among my mom, my brother Marcus, and me. But after a conversation last year, one I had nearly forgotten, he changed his mind. The letter enclosed a handwritten note from Grandpa. Dear Kira, when you visited last December, you told me about your dream to start an education project for underprivileged girls in STEM. That stuck with me. Later, I overheard your mother say it was naive charity talk, and Marcus laughed, saying you'd outgrow it once life hit. That's when I knew. You're the only one who'd use this money for more than yourself. I'm leaving it all to you. Love, Grandpa. I stared at the letter numb. I remembered that day. We had been sitting on his porch sipping tea. I told him I wanted to build something real, something lasting. And he had listened, truly listened. When Marcus got back from Europe, he called me. Kira, hey, just got back. Wanted to talk about Grandpa's estate. You got the letter right. I was thinking since you're married now and probably combining incomes, you wouldn't mind helping us out a bit with the renovation. The house could really use a new kitchen, and... I cut him off. You didn't read the will, did you? Not yet, he said, chuckling. Why? Grandpa left everything to me. All of it. His house, his savings, his investments. Silence. Then you're joking. No, he wrote me a letter explaining why. Said you laughed when I told him about my nonprofit plans. A pause, then his voice low and cold. That's not fair. Neither was using my wedding fund for your vacation. He hung up, and I finally smiled. After that call with Marcus, I sat still for a long time. No music, no TV, just me and the low hum of the fridge. I wasn't angry anymore, at least not in the way I used to be. It was something deeper now, quieter. Like an ache that no longer screamed but refused to leave. Tyler found me in the kitchen sipping cold tea that had been hot hours ago. "They'll try again," he said softly, handing me a fresh cup. "You know that, right?" I nodded. "They always do. But I think I'm done pretending they'll change." A few days later, just as predicted, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. The next morning, there were 3 more missed calls and a text that read, "We need to talk. It's urgent." I didn't answer. That evening, she showed up at my door. I opened it, unsure if I was ready. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing her clearly for the first time. "Can we talk inside?" she asked, clutching her purse like it held all the right words. I stepped aside. Tyler stayed in the living room, quiet but present. My mom and I sat at the dining table where I'd folded wedding invitations just a month earlier. "You got the estate letter?" she began. "I did." She sighed as if she were the victim in all this. "Your grandfather was confused near the end. He loved us all equally. I'm sure he didn't mean to cut your brother and me out completely." I raised an eyebrow. He wasn't confused. He left a letter. A very clear one. Her eyes narrowed. "Kira, I'm your mother. You're married now, starting a life. You don't need all that money, but your brother? He's trying to support 3 kids, and I'm not exactly swimming in savings." "Maybe that's why Grandpa chose me," I said quietly. "He knew I'd use the money for something beyond myself." She flinched. "Don't be cruel." "No, Mom, I'm being honest. You used my wedding fund for a European vacation. Then didn't even send a text." "That wasn't an accident. That was a choice." Her voice turned sharp. "That money was a gift. You should have said it came with conditions." I stood up. It wasn't a gift. It was a sacrifice. One you pretended to accept only to do what suited you better. So now forgive me if I choose not to fund your next family project." She stood too angry now. "If you go through with this, you'll be alone. You'll cut us off completely." I looked her dead in the eye. "You did that when you prioritized sightseeing over my wedding." She stormed out. Tyler didn't say a word. He just walked over and wrapped his arms around me. I didn't cry, not this time. The next week, I officially started the paperwork for my nonprofit. I named it STEM for Her, a program designed to provide scholarships, resources, and mentorship to girls in underserved communities who dream of becoming engineers, coders, the things I once dreamed of when I was young before I was told to be realistic by people who couldn't imagine anything bigger than their own comfort. Tyler, bless him, jumped in with both feet. He was a biochemist by trade, but a dreamer by heart. His lab connected me with a few grant partners. We got a small team of volunteers. Things moved fast. Still, the calls from my family didn't stop. My mother sent a long email that started with, "I forgive you," and ended with, "But I hope you reconsider before you ruin everything." My brother's wife posted something passive-aggressive on Facebook. Some people inherit money and forget they were ever part of a family. I didn't respond. I just unfollowed them. 2 months in STEM for Her had helped 6 girls pay for their first year of college prep courses. They sent me handwritten letters. One of them said, "No one ever believed I could be a scientist. Until now." I framed it. Then came the real hit. A blog post from my mom circulated among her church friends. It painted me as a greedy daughter who had taken advantage of her grandfather's kindness, claimed I'd manipulated a sick old man and left my struggling family in the dust. Photos from my wedding ones I had never shared publicly were somehow included. A friend from the community group messaged me, "Hey Kira, I just wanted you to know this is going around. I didn't believe a word of it, but it's getting attention." I sat down, hands trembling, and read it twice. Then I opened a folder on my computer. It was titled simply Receipts. In it, I had every email, invoice, and text related to the wedding. Flight confirmations, hotel reservations, the money transfers, screenshots of my brother's European vacation photos, timestamps and all. I even had Grandpa's letter scanned and saved. But the real gem, a video. Grandpa sitting in his favorite chair explaining to his lawyer why he changed his will. "My granddaughter has a heart for others," he said. "That's more important than any bloodline." I stared at his face, soft eyes, gentle smile. He believed in me when no one else did. That night I made my own post. I didn't attack, I didn't insult. I just told the truth. I shared my side. I showed the documents, the photos, the voice recording, and at the end, I wrote this, "You can believe what you want. But I won't stay silent while lies rewrite my story. This isn't about money, it's about values. And I will keep using what Grandpa gave me to help girls who deserve a chance. That's what legacy means to me." Within hours, it blew up. Friends, clients, old professors, everyone shared it. The comments were filled with love, support, and shock. "I can't believe your own mother said that. Thank you for standing your ground. This is inspiring. You're doing what too many are afraid to do. Keep going." Tyler brought me dinner that night. Pasta with extra cheese because he knows that's my comfort food. I scrolled through the messages, a lump in my throat. Then one came from an unknown number. Just 4 words, "We're done with you." It was my mother. I stared at the message, then deleted it. Finally, I felt free. The morning after my post went viral, I woke up to more than 50 new messages. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in years, former classmates, old coworkers, even one of my high school teachers. Most of them had the same sentiment: "I'm proud of you. Don't let them silence you." It should have felt like victory, and in some ways it did. But there was also a strange hollowness, a space where something should have been. Maybe that's what losing family really feels like, not the shouting matches, but the quiet after. Tyler noticed. He didn't push, just made extra tea and walked the dog without being asked. That's love, I thought. Simple, steady, present. A week later, I got a message that made my stomach twist. It was from a former client, someone whose company had been one of our early nonprofit sponsors. The subject line was blunt: "Need to talk reputation concerns." I knew what was coming. When we finally spoke, the tone was polite but distant. "There's been chatter," she said carefully. "One of our board members saw a post claiming mismanagement of funds. We know it's probably baseless, but we're getting pressure to distance ourselves until things clear up." I didn't get angry. I didn't even try to argue. I just said, "Understood. Thank you for letting me know." After we hung up, I stared out the window for a long time. The damage wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional, real, measurable. But I didn't fold. I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Legacy Proof, and I started building a new document. Every receipt, grant letter, school report, and scholarship detail. Every email showing where every dollar had gone. No fluff, no defense, just facts. Then I reached out to a journalist I trusted, someone who once covered education reform and had a reputation for balanced stories. I sent her everything. "If you're interested, I wrote this is the full story. No edits, no expectations." She called me the next day. "This needs to be shared," she said simply. "I'll treat it with care." 3 days later, the article dropped. It wasn't sensational. It didn't attack anyone by name. But it painted the full picture. The betrayal, the will, the project, the impact. It even included quotes from the students we'd helped and excerpts from Grandpa's letter. At the end, the journalist wrote something that stuck with me. "Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is tell the truth and keep going." The public response was immediate. More donations came in, volunteers, messages from parents asking how to apply for their daughters. Even the client company that had backed out sent a quiet apology. "We were too quick to judge," they said. "I forgave them. Not because they deserved it, but because carrying bitterness would only weigh me down." Then something unexpected happened. My Uncle Mom's younger brother, the one who'd always stayed neutral, called me. "We hadn't spoken in years. I just read the article," he said. "And I want you to know, your grandpa was proud of you, more than he ever said out loud." I didn't know what to say. Thanks was all I managed. Then he added, "I wish I'd stood up sooner. I let them steamroll you. I'm sorry. I didn't cry, but I felt something shift. The ache in my chest eased just a little." By late spring, STEM for Her had funded 20 full academic prep scholarships. We partnered with 2 community centers. Tyler and I were even invited to speak at a youth leadership event. Life felt full for the first time in a long time. But that peace didn't last. Not completely. One evening I got a package. No return address. Inside was a stack of photos. Old ones. Me as a kid with Marcus riding bikes. Christmas mornings. Grandpa on the porch smiling. And a note written in sharp pen strokes. "You think you're better than us, but family doesn't just disappear. Watch your back." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I recognized the handwriting, my mother's. I sat on the floor holding those photos, unsure whether to laugh or shake. Tyler came home to find me there. He picked up the note, read it once, and said, "We're getting a restraining order?" I nodded. No protest, no hesitation. The next morning, we filed the paperwork. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. A clean line drawn. A barrier legally and emotionally. Weeks passed. The air began to warm, the days stretched longer, and in the quiet of early summer mornings, I began to feel something new. Hope. Maybe healing isn't always dramatic. Maybe it's just a series of small intentional steps toward freedom. Then one morning, I felt the change. The shift in my body. I'd been waking up nauseous, thought it was stress. But a test confirmed it. I was pregnant. I sat in the bathroom staring at the plus sign, heart pounding. It wasn't fear, not exactly, it was awe. This little life inside me was the start of something brand new. When I told Tyler, his eyes went wide, then soft. He pulled me into the tightest hug. "We're going to be okay," he whispered. "You already built something from ashes. Now we build something even greater." That night, I lay in bed with my hand on my belly, whispering promises to a future I hadn't dared to dream of before. "You'll grow up knowing love," I murmured. Not guilt, not obligation, just love. And for the first time in years, I slept without waking once. Pregnancy has a strange way of making you revisit every version of yourself: the scared kid, the overlooked daughter, the woman who kept waiting for love to show up where it never lived. And yet, every morning, I woke up with a little more clarity, like my body knew it was time to let the old weight go. Tyler was over the moon. He started reading baby books, calculating nursery budgets, even downloaded an app to track fetal development like it was his job. Watching him transform from supportive partner to future dad made something soften in me. Maybe not everyone leaves. Maybe some people really do stay. We told his parents first. His mom cried. Not from shock, but from joy, the kind that fills a room without asking permission. "This baby's going to grow up surrounded by good people," she said, hugging me. "And we're not just talking blood. We're talking love." I believed her, more than I ever believed my own mother. After dinner, Tyler's dad handed me a small wooden box. "I made this years ago," he said, rubbing the lid with his thumb. "For when you'd become a mother." I didn't know when, but I knew it would come. Inside was a hand-carved rattle. Maple wood. Smooth. Beautiful. I held it in my hands, silent. It felt like peace. No expectations. Just a gift. No strings attached. Meanwhile, STEM for her kept growing. We were small, sure, but the impact was real. The local school district invited us to pilot a mentorship program. The mayor's office mentioned us in a community speech. I was even interviewed for a podcast on women-led education nonprofits. Each time I spoke about Grandpa's letter and the reason I started this work, I felt him near. Like he'd quietly laid the foundation for me long before I had the courage to stand on it. But family history has a way of tugging at your sleeves just when you think you're moving forward. One morning I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something in me said, "Pick up." "Hello," the voice was hesitant. "Kira." "It's Lana, my cousin, the only one who messaged me on my wedding day." "I hope this isn't weird," she continued. "But things have gotten really bad with your mom and Marcus. I didn't know who else to talk to." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "Alex left Marcus. The house remodel never happened. They're deep in debt. Your mom's been living with him, but it's messy. Real messy." There was a pause. "I'm not calling for money. I just thought you should know." I thanked her. I meant it. Not for the gossip, but for the warning. I could already feel it. The shift. The slow circle back. The moment they'd come crawling, not because they missed me, but because they needed something. And right on cue, the next day, I got an email from my mother. Subject line, "For the sake of the children." I didn't even open it. I just archived it. That night, I sat on the porch watching the wind play with the trees. Tyler joined me, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "Lana called today," I said. He didn't look surprised. "They're spiraling. It's not my business anymore." He sipped his tea. "You're allowed to walk away from fire, even if people say you're the one who struck the match." I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. I keep wondering if the baby will ever ask why they don't know that side of the family. Tyler turned toward me, eyes steady. "Then you'll tell them the truth. Not the bitter version, just the honest one." As summer deepened, I found myself slowing down, not just physically, but mentally. I stopped checking my family's social media. I let go of the urge to defend myself. I focused on the baby, on the nonprofit, on the life we were building in a house that smelled like fresh paint and second chances. Tyler and I started prepping the nursery. Pale green walls, wooden shelves, a bookshelf that already had more stories than clothes. Every nail I hammered felt like healing. Every corner painted felt like a quiet declaration, this will be different. Then came the baby shower. Kathy Tyler's mom insisted on hosting. No pressure, she'd said, just people who love you. No drama, no guilt trips. And she kept her word. It was small, joyful, and filled with warmth. My friend Rachel flew in and cried the moment she saw my bump. I remember when we were planning your wedding and you still thought being happy was something you had to earn, she said, hugging me tight. Look at you now. I looked around the room, faces smiling, laughter echoing off the walls, and not 1 ounce of tension in the air. It was the first time in years I felt like I could breathe fully. After everyone left, Kathy helped me pack the gifts into neat piles. You doing okay? She asked, brushing cake crumbs off the counter. Better than okay, I said, surprising even myself. I didn't think it was possible to feel this whole. She smiled. That's the trick, honey. People will try to make you believe you're incomplete without them. But you were never broken. You just had the wrong people holding the glue. Later that night, I sat by the nursery window with a cup of warm milk. The moon hung low and full, casting a soft glow across the crib. My hands rested on my belly. The baby kicked gently like they knew I was there. I whispered, You'll grow up safe. You'll know boundaries, not burdens. You won't have to earn our affection. It'll be the air you breathe. And then I laughed. Not because something was funny, but because I finally believed those words. Not long after, we got a letter from the lawyer. Apparently, Marcus had tried to contest Grandpa's will. Claimed mental manipulation. Said I coerced him. Said I'd misled the attorney. But it was all hearsay. The lawyer handled it swiftly, professionally. We didn't even have to show up. The judge dismissed the claim immediately. No evidence, the letter read. Inheritance stands as written. I folded the letter and tucked it away in a drawer with Grandpa's note. I didn't feel triumphant. Just done. Like closing a book after the last page. No fireworks. No tears. Just silence and peace. The next week, Tyler and I took a walk through the neighborhood. The leaves were just beginning to change, painting the trees in gold and crimson. I looked down at my belly and said, This baby's going to love autumn. Tyler grinned. Just like you. We passed a little bookstore with a help wanted sign and paused to look inside. A girl no older than 20 stood behind the counter, flipping through a textbook. She looked up, met my eyes, and smiled shyly. I turned to Tyler. That's one of ours, he blinked. One of the girls from the scholarship program, I nodded. Her name's Ayla. She used the first grant we gave to pay for her SAT classes. We stepped inside and bought a children's book. Ayla rang us up. She didn't recognize me. I didn't say anything. I just paid and said, You're doing great. Keep going. Her face lit up. Thank you, she said. I'm trying, I smiled. You're doing more than trying. Back home, I placed the book on the nursery shelf. The title read Dream Big Little One. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't dreaming of what might have been. I was dreaming of what could be. Time has a way of softening the sharpest edges. Not erasing the hurt, but sanding it down so it doesn't cut you every time you remember. By the time the leaves turned brittle and fell from the trees, I was 33 weeks pregnant and moving slower than usual. My feet ached, my back complained, but my heart felt steady. Tyler and I had developed a quiet rhythm, morning tea on the porch, nursery updates in the evening, shared laughter in the middle of folding tiny onesies. There was a kind of peace in the ordinary. I hadn't known that kind of calm could exist in real life. Not for me, anyway. But peace doesn't mean the world stops spinning. One afternoon, as I was reviewing new scholarship applications, I got a call from the director of the local high school. We'd love for you to speak at our winter seminar, she said. It's about mentorship, legacy, and leadership. We think your story could inspire some of our girls. I agreed, not out of ego, but because I remembered what it felt like to sit in classrooms where no one looked like me, no one thought girls should code or lead or build. If I could be proof that dreams don't need permission, I'd go. The seminar was small but full of energy. Rows of students in mismatched hoodies, notebooks, open eyes sharp. I told them about STEM for her, but I didn't sugarcoat anything. I talked about failure, family, betrayal, and choice. I said, sometimes the people closest to you will ask you to shrink so they can stay comfortable. Don't. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. One girl raised her hand and asked, what do you do when your own family is the reason you doubt yourself? I paused, the air still around us. You build your own foundation, I said, and you protect it like it's sacred. Because it is. They clapped. But more than that, they listened. And that meant everything. That night back at home, I found myself rereading old journal entries. Back when I still believed I could fix things with more effort. Back when I thought my worth was tied to how many sacrifices I could make before someone said thank you. It made me ache for that version of me, not because she was weak, but because she tried so hard to earn love from people who never knew how to give it. Then came the voicemail. It was late. I was rubbing lotion on my belly, talking softly to the baby when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. But the voicemail came through. I played it on speaker. It was my mother. Her voice was strained brittle like oversteeped tea. Kira, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to tell you we lost the house. Marcus moved out. I'm staying with a friend. I'm not okay. And I guess I just wondered if there's any space left for me in your life. Even a small one. She paused. I know I hurt you. I was proud, selfish, blind. Maybe all three. I'm not asking for money, just acknowledgement. I'm still your mother. She ended with congratulations, by the way. I saw the article about your nonprofit and the pregnancy. I sat in silence, not angry, not sad, just still. Tyler walked in and saw the look on my face. Was that her? I nodded. She's not doing well. He sat beside me, waited. Are you thinking of calling back? I didn't answer right away. Then finally, I don't know. I think part of me still wants a version of her that never existed. And the other part knows I need to protect what I'm building. He didn't offer advice, just held my hand. The next morning I wrote a letter. Not to send, just to write. I told her everything I'd never said aloud, how it felt when she chose silence on my wedding day. How betrayal doesn't always look like screaming, but sometimes just feels like absence. I wrote until my fingers cramped, then folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. Closure doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from the clarity of being able to walk away without bitterness. A few weeks later, our nonprofit received a national grant. We were selected for a mentorship accelerator program. The recognition wasn't just financial, it was a validation of purpose. I cried in the kitchen while reading the email. Tyler lifted me off the floor, spun me gently despite my swollen belly. You did it, he whispered. You really did it. I smiled through tears. We did it. Soon after, I went into labor. It was a rainy Tuesday morning. The sky was low and gray, the kind that makes the world feel small and quiet. Contractions started while I was slicing apples. I knew instantly it was time, not because it hurt, but because it felt like something inside me had shifted from waiting to ready. Tyler drove like a calm maniac, one hand on the wheel, one eye on me, repeating, "Breathe, baby." I've got you. At the hospital, everything blurred into motion, nurses, monitors, IVs. But when our daughter arrived, the world slowed. She was perfect. Soft cries, strong lungs, tiny fists that curled instinctively around my finger. I looked at her and thought, this is the beginning of everything. We named her Alara, after a star. Because that's what she was. A light that cut through everything that had come before. The first few nights were hard, sleepless, overwhelming. But Tyler was there. Every bottle, every diaper, every midnight rocking session. He never made me feel alone. And in those quiet hours holding Alara against my chest, I understood something I hadn't before. This love didn't come with conditions. It didn't demand I prove myself. It just was. Full, steady, sacred. One morning I found a package at the door. No note, just a small box. Inside was a quilt. Handmade. Intricate patterns. Old-fashioned stitching. And a card unsigned for Alara. May her path be nothing like ours. I knew it was from my mother. I didn't call her. But I placed the quilt at the foot of the crib. Not as a gesture of reconciliation, but as a reminder that history doesn't have to repeat, that pain can be transformed. Weeks turned into months. Alara grew stronger, louder, more curious. She started smiling in her sleep, and Tyler swore she dreamed of flying. Our nonprofit expanded to 3 cities. I returned to work part-time, balancing spreadsheets with lullabies. And every time I saw a girl walk into our center with wide eyes and hesitant hope, I felt like something bigger than legacy was unfolding. Like we weren't just breaking cycles, we were building something entirely new. And maybe that's the heart of it. Maybe real healing isn't loud, it's not dramatic. Maybe it's a slow rebuild. One truth at a time, one kind boundary, one love-filled morning. Until one day you wake up and realize you are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are simply living. And that's enough. By the time Alara was crawling across the living room floor, pulling herself up with shaky determination, the ghosts of my past no longer haunted every quiet moment. They didn't disappear, not entirely, but their shadows had grown faint, softened by time, by growth, by the steady rhythm of a new life unfolding in real time. Our home, once a space marked by planning and rebuilding, now felt lived and rooted. There were crayon marks on the coffee table, baby socks hidden between couch cushions, and laughter echoing through rooms that used to be filled with long silences. And somehow all of that felt like healing, not a destination, but a living, breathing thing. STEM for her was thriving. We had helped over 100 girls across 3 states. I'd stopped tracking the numbers for personal validation. Now I did it to measure our reach, to prove to funders that impact wasn't abstract. It had names, faces, dreams attached. One of our first scholars, Ayla, sent us an update. She'd been accepted to a biomedical engineering program. Her letter said, "You didn't just give me money, you gave me permission to believe I was worth investing in." I printed it and pinned it above my desk right next to Grandpa's letter. And yet, despite everything we built, despite the peace we cultivated, reminders of the past had a way of slipping through the cracks. A local news station did a short feature on our nonprofit. They asked about my motivation, about legacy. I spoke honestly, not to indict my family, but to honor the reason behind the work. That same night, a message came through. A new email from Marcus. Short, tense. "You talk like we're the villains in your origin story, but you left a lot out. Don't think you're better just because you had a head start with Grandpa's favoritism." I stared at the words, unreadable emotion buzzing beneath my skin. For a second, just a second, I considered replying. But then I looked at Alara babbling as she tried to balance a block on her tiny head. And I remembered this wasn't about winning arguments anymore. It was about choosing peace over explanations. So I closed the laptop, walked over, and scooped her up. Her giggles drowned out every lingering echo of guilt. And in that moment, I knew his words couldn't reach me. Not anymore. Months passed. Alara took her first steps in the garden. Tyler and I clapped like overjoyed fools, filming every wobble like it was a championship race. She fell into my arms, laughing, and I thought, she'll never have to wonder if she's wanted. She'll never doubt she belongs. The cycle had truly broken, not with grand declarations, but with everyday choices. Love instead of control. Presence instead of guilt. Boundaries instead of obligation. One afternoon, while organizing old files, I came across a sealed envelope I didn't recognize. Tucked between donation records, written in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. I must have missed it when the lawyer sent everything. My heart quickened as I sat down and opened it. Inside was a single sheet. "Kira, if you're reading this, then you've already faced storms I hoped you'd never have to. But I also knew deep down that you would survive them, not because you're hardened, but because you have something they never learned to grow. Integrity. I didn't leave you everything because you were the easiest choice. I left it to you because I trusted you to do something real with it. Something lasting, something kind. Family isn't built on shared blood. It's built on shared values. Don't look back too long. The future needs you more. Love always, Grandpa." Tears slipped down my cheeks as I read it again and again, the weight of his belief in me pressing against every part of my chest. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into Alara's keepsake box. One day she'd read it, and when she did, she'd know exactly where she came from, not just biologically, but spiritually. Later that week, I got a call from Lana. "Just wanted to say thank you," she said, "for setting the boundary, for not pretending. You gave the rest of us permission to stop pretending too." We talked for nearly an hour. Not about the past, but about new beginnings. She'd started therapy. She was moving into her own apartment. For the first time, she sounded free. It made me realize how much power we give away trying to protect people who would never do the same for us. How often we confuse love with self-abandonment, and how rare it is to reclaim both truth and tenderness at once. By Alara's first birthday, we hosted a small celebration. Just close friends, Tyler's parents, our nonprofit team. There were no elaborate themes, just laughter music and a single candle on a banana muffin. When Alara smashed it with her tiny fists and shrieked with delight, I laughed until my sides hurt. Kathy leaned over and whispered, "You did it, sweetheart. You gave her what every child deserves." I nodded, tears in my eyes. I gave it to myself too. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm orange streaks across our backyard, I held Alara close, rocking gently. Tyler wrapped his arms around us both. We stood like that, 3 lives stitched together, not by perfection, but by presence. I thought of every moment that led to this one. Every slammed door, every silence, every seed of doubt that was now just dust in the wind. Healing isn't a straight path. It loose, stumbles. Sometimes it even retreats, but it keeps moving. And if you walk long enough, if you keep showing up day after day, truth after truth, it brings you home. I looked up at the sky where the first stars began to appear. And I whispered, not because I needed to say it, but because it felt like the right thing to close the circle. Thank you, Grandpa, I found my way. Alara looked up at me, then big eyes wide with curiosity. She pointed at the stars, murmured something only she understood, and I smiled. She didn't need to understand the past. She just needed to feel safe in the present. And as I kissed her forehead and swayed beneath the quiet night, I realized that was more than enough. This was the life I built, and it was finally mine. Story 2. Since your insurance is placing an excessive burden on our household budget, I have made the decision to terminate it. You will now be responsible for paying for your own insurance and treatment. My heart was broken by that sentence, a cozy spot for family get-togethers. The living room was decked out for Christmas. Today, however, was different. The air seemed heavy as soon as I entered the house. As if they were at a business meeting, my parents were seated around the dining table with solemn expressions. Elise said, "Natalie, sit down." There was none of the warmth in her voice. It was businesslike and icy. I felt my continuous glucose monitor on my wrist vibrate a little when I sat down slowly. It was detecting my tension and alerting me to a blood sugar increase. She told me that they were canceling my insurance and would no longer cover any of my treatments, saying, "We need to talk about your insurance and treatment." 16 years of routine endocrinologist visits, insulin injections, and daily glucose tests. That had all been part of my daily routine necessary to keep me alive. Medication costs $600 a month, insurance costs $7, $200 a year, and there are innumerable medical gadgets and testing materials. I would actually perish without them. I inhaled deeply and repressed my feelings. I made an effort to keep the poise I had developed over the previous 2 years of managing my company. "Receipts are important," I said coolly. "That's right, I knew you would comprehend." Elise murmured with a sigh of relief. "Your monthly assistance with the mortgage is greatly appreciated. Nevertheless, your medical bills are excessive. The monthly medicine, the testing supplies, the doctor's visits, and the $7 and $200 insurance premium. Do you see the strain it's placing on our finances?" My heart fell. Even though they were still taking my financial assistance, they were calling my life-sustaining costs a burden. They told me that although they appreciate the money I provide them for living expenses, the cost of my medical care is too high. "Our medical expenses also went up as a result of your father's injuries at the construction site." "We're having trouble," Natalie Elise went on. "You are now 21. The moment has come for you to pay for your own health care." They were reducing the expense that kept me alive while gratefully accepting my financial assistance. "Which insurance provider is it?" I inquired. "The Blue Cross. I completed the cancellation over the phone this morning. The deadline is January 1st. Elise claimed that her tone was informal, as though she had just changed her phone plan. "You are successfully managing your own company. You must be able to pay for your own insurance." Once more, my glucose monitor vibrated. I was having a spike in blood sugar. 16 years of diabetic treatment combined with an acute stress response. Even though I knew what my body was doing, I had never felt this much tension before. "I mean, you know how much I give you each month?" Silently, I said. "Obviously," Elise said. "In addition to the $1,800 mortgage, we occasionally ask you to pay for your father's prescription drugs. Thank you very much. However, that is not included in your medical costs." Distinct? Yes, exactly. We're family, so you're helping us, right? "However, your medical bills are an individual expense. You should take care of your own needs now that you're an adult and graduating from college." Without taking his eyes off the television, my father spoke. "Natty is a decent young lady. She will comprehend. Because she loves her family, she assists us each month." "Correct," Elise went on. "We've benefited greatly from your support, so you'll continue to do so, right?" I was shocked by what she said. They wanted my financial support to continue even though they were terminating my insurance. To them, my money was more important than my life. "You get it," Natty correct. At last, my dad turned away from the television and said something truthful. "Is your illness truly so bad? You put a lot of effort into your work and you generally look good. Are you truly in need of such costly care?" My wrist-worn glucose meter vibrated. Elise went on, "I mean, you simply put that tiny gadget on your arm and inject yourself once in a while, don't you? Is that much money really needed for that? Isn't it easier for most diabetics to manage?" She stated strongly that Natalie was exaggerating. "Is seeing an endocrinologist every 3 months really necessary? You shouldn't need to monitor your blood sugar 6 times a day. A family doctor should be sufficient. 2 or 3 ought to work. Is that pricey sensor really necessary? The traditional finger prick technique ought to be sufficient." Her remarks left me speechless. She was exaggerating the medical treatment that had sustained me for 16 years. "Furthermore, you don't even appear ill," my father said. You lead a typical life and work every day. Wouldn't you appear worse if you were truly ill? I was now in the danger zone on my glucose monitor. Nevertheless, this gadget was among the things they said were superfluous. Since you've always been sensible and practical, I assumed you'd be able to relate to our financial predicament. And we've been able to make ends meet because of your help. I reached my breaking point and got to my feet, as Elise turned my expression from silence into a useful interpretation. I'm sorry. I left the home without turning around, but I had already made up my mind in the car. I took another look at my glucose meter. My blood sugar remained elevated. I was already formulating a plan on the drive home. Make emergency medical insurance arrangements first. After that, give my family all of the money they need. My medical bills were determined to be personal expenses. It was time for them to find out that I was personally helping them pay their mortgage. When I was 5 years old, I received a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. My life was governed by a medical routine after that day. Tests for blood sugar first thing in the morning. Take insulin prior to eating. While other children played, a last check was made before bed. I was figuring out how to survive on my own. At the time, my parents always went to my endocrinol allergy sessions with me, meticulously documented my blood sugar logs, and closely followed the doctor's directions. However, their attitude gradually started to change as I got older and learned how to handle it on my own. Natalie is doing well. She is capable of managing things alone. When I got my insulin pump, my father commented, "Well, that makes things easier," Elise started to say. "Now the machine does it." When I was shaking and putting a glucose pill in my mouth, my blood sugar became unstable due to stress. Be less theatrical. There is only a slight decrease in blood sugar. You know, even regular people get hungry. Elise said. Desperately, I tried to explain. This isn't your typical hunger, Mom. I may lose consciousness if my blood sugar falls below 50. However, you're awake, aren't you? Why are you able to attend school as usual if it is truly that dangerous? What allowed you to sit for college entrance exams? Their new understanding was based on that reasoning. It wasn't so bad if I could go about my everyday existence. It wasn't too pricey if I could do it myself. I didn't require special treatment if I appeared normal. They started to notice my 16 years of work. It is standard practice to check blood sugar levels every day, follow a strict diet, see a doctor frequently, and respond to alarms at night. They began to minimize the severity of my sickness because of my skill in managing myself. Isn't it easier for other diabetics to manage? Elise started talking more. A little too much of a perfectionist you are. To them, my unseen worry, daily computations, and ongoing medical attention seemed like normal things. My adult medical bills were now being written off as personal expenses, and my life-sustaining efforts had been reduced to a habit. Ironically, they disregarded my sickness more and more as I become more capable as a patient. They had used my accomplishment as a pretext to cut back on support. Then when I started college 2 years ago, my digital marketing company started to expand quickly. What started off as a modest side gig grew to generate over $15,000 a month. However, that achievement was accompanied with pleas for money from my relatives. It all began when my father had a back injury while working on a building job. My parents came to me in financial distress due to the prolonged workers' compensation process. "We are incredibly proud of your company's success. You've performed remarkably well. Is there any way you could help us with the promise only a few months would pass?" I consented to cover his prescription costs. Then the mortgage issue arose. When the foreclosure warning came, his shortened work hours resulted in 3 months of missed payments. "We need to ask for a favor," they told me, Natalie. "Are you able to assist us with the mortgage? We can't rely on anyone else. Our hope lies on you." They were my parents, yet I was hesitant. "The folks who brought me up, I take it that this is only temporary?" I inquired. "Naturally, we'll reimburse you as soon as things with your dad become better." What a blessing you have been. Our miracle. I had conflicting emotions. $800 a month was a significant investment for me as my firm was just beginning to settle. At the same time, though, I felt bad. I was reared by these individuals. "Okay," I said, "I'll help if you're having problems." "Thank you. Nati, you are a truly amazing daughter." However, a few months became a year and a year became 2. I made multiple attempts to propose reducing the aid, but guilt always got in the way. For years, my parents had sacrificed for me. My regular doctor appointments, special meals, and medical bills. Could I truly ignore them now that they were having trouble? "We're quite proud of you, Natalie. Having such a successful daughter is a true blessing for us. However, family members are meant to support one another, right?" Elise Pierce's statement struck a deep chord with me. Family members are meant to support one another. Wasn't it my responsibility as a member of this family to help the others now that I was successful? Each time I contemplated declining to assist. I was haunted by memories. I was being held by my mother when I passed out from low blood sugar. At school, my father took time out to explain my insulin pump. Back then, they took care of everything for me. I told myself, I have to do everything for them now. I was successful at the time, therefore it seemed appropriate to keep helping. I have $1,800 for the mortgage on the 15th of each month, along with sporadic emergency expenses set up for automatic payments. Before I knew it, I was providing for their entire way of life. However, their attitude toward me changed from one of appreciation to one of entitlement. We are lucky to have Natalie. The term support became widely used. My achievement had become a handy ATM to them. In contrast, they reacted negatively to my medical bills, another trip to the doctor. Does an endocrinologist really need to be hired? Isn't a family physician sufficient? Those sensors on the insulin pump. Each month they cost this much. As he examined the month bill, my father stated, "Is there not a less expensive one?" In the middle of the night, my glucose monitor's alarm went off. That sound once more, it keeps going off while I'm trying to sleep. They grumbled. I made an effort to convey the gravity of type 1 diabetes, the difficulty of day-to-day care, and the risk of any disruption. However, their response remained unchanged. However, you lead a normal life, don't you? If that's the case, how are you managing your company? My unseen impairment. The constant medical control, the everyday anxieties. To them, it was all luxury. In the meantime, they had to pay their mortgage, while I was making monthly contributions of more than $1,800. My $600 prescription charge was deemed excessively costly. They claimed that my $7,200 insurance payment was a burden, even though I was contributing $21,600 annually. It was easy math. They were providing me around 3 times as much as I was giving them, but I had to pay for what I needed to live. On the other hand, they were given a familial duty by me to survive. On Christmas Day, it became evident that my value was derived on my wealth rather than my life. Although it was required of me to provide for their monthly needs, it was my own job to keep myself alive. I decided. I had no duty to put their comfort ahead of my own existence if they believed that my life was a personal affair, and I would also be free to choose whether or not to support them. I accessed my banking app at home that evening and gazed at the figures. I thought back on the previous 2 years. I started by turning off my mortgage's automatic payment. My palms weren't shaking when the notification that the payment had been canceled showed up. I was composed and determined. I deleted my name from the emergency fund account and terminated the joint account. In less than half an hour, I also canceled the credit card that had been used to cover my father's medical bills. I spent 2 years creating a financial support system, which I then totally destroyed. I then made a call to the office of Dr. Evelyn Marks. Endocrine coworkers, it's Camilla here. The phone was answered by a pleasant voice. Hello. I want to make an urgent appointment with Dr. Marks. Natalie Henderson is this person. Suddenly, my insurance was canceled. Oh no. Camilla's tone became worried. I'll check your file. Indeed, Natalie. February 15th is when you have your next appointment. You mentioned that your insurance was canceled, right? Indeed, my coverage was discontinued by my family on January 1st. It is December 26th today. I will no longer have access to healthcare in 5 days. Here it is. This is a severe matter. It is quite harmful for a person with type 1 diabetes to go uninsured. I'll check. Dr. Marks' timetable. Hold on, please. Following a 3-minute wait. Music. Camilla came back. You can visit Dr. Marks tomorrow at 2 p.m. There is no doubt that this is an emergency. I sat in front of the endocrinologist who had been my doctor for 16 years the following day at Dr. Marks' office. Deep concern was engraved on her face. Tell me exactly what's happening, Natalie. In order to alleviate financial strain, my parents terminated my health insurance without my knowledge or approval. Dr. Marks scowled. Are your parents aware of how dangerous type 1 diabetes is? No, they don't, I replied. Normal diabetics do very fine according to my mother, who felt I was being dramatic. According to my father, I don't appear ill, thus I probably don't require costly medical care. Incredibly so. Dr. Marks gave a headshake. You've been a model patient for 16 years, Natalie. Stringent control of blood sugar, frequent observation, and continuing assistance. What would happen without those? I needed to hear the response, but I already knew it. You would enter diabetic ketoacidosis in a matter of days to a week if you were not taking insulin. Without medical attention, you would lose consciousness, go into a coma, and eventually pass away. It's not dramatic. It is a fact of medicine. She went on. Without it, your continuous glucose monitor has often picked up hypoglycemia at night. You run the actual risk of falling into a hazardous slumber and not waking up. That situation is potentially fatal. Sincerely, I said. However, my parents determined that my life was not as essential as saving $700 to $200 a year on insurance premiums. The look on Dr. Marks's face hardened. Sadly, I've seen families discontinue coverage more frequently than I'd want to acknowledge in my many years as an endocrinology specialist, particularly for young, seemingly healthy patients. However, this is considered medical neglect. She gave me a prolonged gaze. Family members might occasionally be the most hazardous individuals in our lives, especially if they have a negative opinion of us, Natalie. It's not selfish to defend oneself against those that don't care about your life. It is a matter of survival. You mean severing connections if required. Indeed, your survival is more important than their comfort or aspirations. I came home that day with a week's supply of pricey prescription drugs, emergency insurance documents, and a medical letter. More significantly, though, I received confirmation from a medical expert that I was entitled to self-defense because my family was putting my life in jeopardy. For the first time in a long time, I felt at ease that evening. At last, my blood sugar levels stabilized. Everything had reverted to its regular medical routine, and my emergency medications were secured. However, a fundamental shift had occurred. No amount of apology or justification could make up for the border my parents breached. One evening, the phone began to ring. After a week, my mother was the one who called first. The bank got in touch with us. The mortgage payment was turned down. Surely there must be an error. I took the call and calmly answered. It's not an error. The automated payment was stopped by me. Why would you do such a thing? There was a sense of panic in her voice. You said you would assist us. You are essential to us. You claimed that I had to pay for my own medical bills. I should hide? Another personal expense is your mortgage. Cover it yourself, please. That is very different, Elise yelled. The house is the subject of the mortgage, our way of life. Your hospital bills are not the same as that. What keeps me alive are my hospital costs. That's more important than your mortgage, don't you think? Aren't you penalizing us because we have health insurance? You weren't brought up to be this mean by me. You lack gratitude. Following everything we did to bring you up? How do you pay us back? Not grateful. I spoke louder. I gave you $21, $600 a year for 4 months. The total is $43, $200. That is 6 times the yearly insurance price of $7, $200. You declined to make the payment. I'm also unappreciative. I hung up the phone while she was still speaking. My father then called around 11 o'clock at night. Nati, what's happening? We created our life plan with the belief that you would support us. I also based my entire existence on the belief that I was insured, but you abruptly canceled it. You're going overboard. In any case, did you not obtain new coverage? At 3 times the price, I had to spend $800 out of pocket for emergency medicines following 4 days of medical disruption. I mentioned that every time the glucose monitor alarm went off at night for 4 days, I lived in constant fear of dying. I pondered whether it would be my final one. While I waited for emergency approval, I kept track of the hours before I would run out of insulin. You consider that to be fine. Quiet. I will no longer be receiving any financial assistance, mortgage, emergency funding, or anything else. You made the decision that my life was a private affair. I now believe that you are personally responsible for your living expenses. Nati. Goodbye. I banned all family numbers after hanging up. A foreclosure notice was formally issued 3 months later. They lost the house 5 months later. My mother started working part-time at a fast food restaurant after my father lost his construction job. I stopped communicating with them once they moved into a little rented flat. After a year, I was at peace. I verified that my insulin pump was operating correctly every morning by looking at the data on my glucose monitor. I continued to see my endocrinologist on a regular basis and had adequate health insurance. I managed my health quite well, and my business kept growing. I was shopping at the local supermarket one Thursday afternoon when I was selecting broccoli from the organic vegetable area. In the corner of my eye was a familiar person. My mother was there when I turned. She had changed dramatically. Her hair, which she used to get styled frequently at a salon, now appeared crooked as though she had cut it herself. Her wardrobe had shifted from high-end labels to low-cost store purchases. Her looks amply demonstrated the lack of the $1,800 I had given her each month. Her countenance changed in a number of intricate ways as soon as our eyes locked. First shock, then embarrassment. Lastly, a glimmer of optimism. She moved gently toward me as I continued to push my cart. Natalie, Her voice was quiet. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I said quickly. "My health is steady." She recoiled a little when she saw that I had used the word health on purpose. I could see that she was reliving the experiences from a year ago. "I've heard that you purchased a new home." She made an effort to shift the conversation. I said, clearly demonstrating that my financial condition remained constant. "Yes, it has a big yard and is perfect for running my business from home." That's fantastic." "Very amazing," she said. She sounded conflicted. There was an unpleasant quiet between us. At last my mother whispered, "Listen, Natalie, we now recognize the importance and necessity of managing your diabetes." "Do you?" I answered impassively. "We were mistaken. We made a grave error." She had tears in her eyes. "Despite the fact that you provided us with monthly support, the medical expenses that were keeping you alive were reduced as much as possible." How unappreciative we were. I gazed at her. I was reared by this woman. She assisted me with my schoolwork, taught me how to ride a bike, and took care of me when I was ill. However, she was also the one who claimed that my $7,200 yearly insurance cost was too much to bear, even though she was getting $21,600 from me. "Is there a way?" "Please," she said. "Is there a method to resolve this? We are having a lot of trouble. The house was lost, your dad was laid off. We now understand that we cannot survive without your assistance. We were such idiots. We were unaware of the extent of your assistance and the significance of your medical care." I inhaled deeply. "You are aware of the repercussions, not my emotions." "What are you saying? You're sorry because you're having financial difficulties. It was because of you that I suffered." She made an attempt to reply, but I went on. "Would you have apologized if I had been able to find a new insurance plan with ease and without any difficulties, and if you had been able to survive without my assistance?" My mom stopped talking. The answer was obvious to both of us. "You've discovered the worth of my assistance, not the worth of my life." She appeared perplexed. "You didn't value my life, you valued my money. It made no difference if I survived or died. Whether I continued to give money was what counted." "That is untrue." She broke down in tears. "Time will tell whether or not you've truly changed, by deeds rather than words. And if you've figured out how to survive without me." "How long is that going to take?" She inquired. "I don't know." I gave an honest response, but instead of asking for my assistance, "Start by solving problems on your own. I'll discover that I'm worth more than just my money." I started to move my cart along. Farewell. I experienced a range of complicated feelings on the trip home. Most of the rage had subsided. A tiny ray of hope and a profound sense of sadness were all that were left. She certainly appeared to be in real pain, but I was unable to determine whether it was love-driven remorse or desperation brought on by financial difficulties. I looked at my glucose monitor when I came home. The figures fell within the typical range. My blood sugar remained stable despite the emotional encounter of today. I could maintain my health even under stress if I received the right medical attention. I had fought to achieve that. What had been worth defending was that. I got a letter in the mail 2 months later. My mother wrote it by hand. "I've given your remarks a lot of thought, dear Natalie. You were correct. We acted as though we were entitled to your support. We thought your money was worth more than you were. I began working 2 jobs. Kenneth has also secured a job. We are attempting to live independently. It's not simple. However, we now realize that we have to accomplish this without you. I hope we can mend our friendship if you ever decide to forgive us. On love with love, not on money. Mom, just so you know, I've been researching type 1 diabetes at the library. I'm starting to realize how powerful you are." That letter was something I read over and over. I don't plan on providing money assistance again, but maybe we can mend our human relationship, a fresh partnership built on understanding and respect for one another. My family is starting to understand that setting and upholding limits can be a way to educate the people we care about. My health and boundaries come first. And often the most significant progress comes from the hardest lessons. They lost their financial security as a result of their disregard for my life's worth, but they also learned the most crucial lesson that I am genuinely valuable and that their actions have a significant impact. My glucose monitor is showing great readings today. My health is stable, my borders are unbroken, and my business is flourishing.